House was an abandoned building. It had been shuttered and abandoned, and it was this government that took a decision some years ago to refurbish that building. It took us a very long time to do, but I challenge any of you to go there and tell me if it does not give you a sense of pride as to how lovingly restored it has been. And to see now dignitaries can come from abroad, and our own Deputy Governor General can recognize those dignitaries and welcome them to a building, to her home, to an official residence that is truly, truly wonderful in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the ambiance, in terms of the grounds, you name it. And I was very impressed with that. I was also very happy that they all went to the hot springs. And indeed, from what I heard, those who alleged that they had aches and pains put their feet in and put the various body parts in. And I am told that they were a little concerned that they had to leave so early. But it was a whirlwind tour. They came around midday or thereabouts, and they left this evening at around 6:30. So we had a good day on Nevis, and I want to thank all of them and thank the staff, the security, and everyone else who have done a really phenomenal job in making this a spectacular week thus far. I have had a number of bilateral discussions, and those bilateral discussions for me will continue tomorrow. As a consequence, I apologize to the many nationals and the many residents here in Nevis who ordinarily would come in their large numbers on a Thursday to see me on my one-on-one, that I cannot do it tomorrow. But I will certainly announce when next I'll be able to do it. I truly apologize. Last week we had a long day with many people coming, and I think that I have been able through this mechanism to not only interact but to find solutions for some who have had problems, sometimes small problems, but nevertheless to give them an opportunity to interact with the Premier of Nevis and to have their problems ventilated and addressed. And so tomorrow, regrettably, we will not be able to have our usual one-on-one because I have to return to St. Kitts, where I have additional bilateral discussions there. And so I ask your forgiveness and your understanding in that regard. Now, we have here with us tonight some guests. I have a very distinguished gentleman. He's no stranger. I believe he's been here before, Dr. Cardell Bal Rollins. And he has come, I'm sorry, to talk to us a bit about the National Health Insurance Scheme that has been proposed by the Unity government, the federal government, and that we are hoping by the last report that I saw to bring on stream sometime this year. I'm told that he is to be joined on the phone by Miss Azilla Clark, is it? Who is also a member of the team that is charged with bringing this to fruition. Is she on the phone already? Okay, well, we'll bring her on the phone because she's calling in. She's not in the studio. And it is 11 minutes past the hour of 8 o'clock. And we have this group, and then we will have someone else, because the show is really a show tonight that is segmented because we have different people coming to talk about different things. Before I go to Ms. Clark, however, let me say to the general public that the Pinnis Park project in Nevis is finally on again. People have been very patient, and we have committed to delivering this project, and the Taiwanese have come on board with us. We want to thank them. As a consequence, the design phase is nearing completion, and they will, at 10 a.m. tomorrow, at the Red Cross building in Charlestown, they will have a town hall meeting. 10 a.m. When I asked why 10 a.m., they said, well, a lot of the stakeholders might be people who work in government, etc., and would want to come. And so 10 a.m. tomorrow, there will be a meeting on the Pinnis Park project at the Red Cross building, I'm advised, in Charlestown. One and all are asked to go and have their views recorded for purposes of including those views in the final design for the park. This park is going to be a reality. This park will be a national park. This park will be something that all of Nevis can be proud of. And I'm asking you to go and lend your ideas to the process. The design has been done, it has had input, and we are asking you now to help us finalize it by giving your impressions and your input. Having made that announcement, I'm sure I'll have other announcements to make during the course of today, and we will certainly continue in that vein. But the course of tonight. I clearly have had a long day. Course of tonight, we'll have other announcements. But now, since Ms. Clark, I'm told, is on the phone, let us go to the phone and have her introduce herself and tell you what it is she wants to talk about. Ms. Clark, good evening to you.
Pleasant good evening to you, Mr. Premier, and to your listeners. This past Sunday was observed as World Health Day, and the theme for World Health Day centered around the issue of universal health care, granting greater access to our more poor and vulnerable in all countries around the world, as the World Health Organization has identified universal health care as a key activity in accomplishing our Sustainable Development Goal that seeks to health for all. So the Health Promotion Unit in Nevis, as a part of their celebration, have asked me, and I hope Dr. Rollins is present, to provide, an update on where we are as it relates to the conversation that was started last year towards the introduction of national health care, or national health insurance, as many persons know it, and to also speak about some of the other potential developments that, with the introduction of that system, will come about so that we can continue to strengthen our healthcare system. As we all know, the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. Can you, Dr. Rollins is in fact here. Perhaps you missed that when I was making my introduction. He is in place. He has a very large laptop with him. And so by the size of the instrument, I'm assuming that he has tons of information that he can pass on to us. So Dr. Rollins, welcome back to On the Mark. I believe the last time you were here, it was again about health insurance. I know you've been an advocate for health insurance for many years. You've bent my ear, certainly, over the years about the need for some form of universal health coverage. And so you're on with Ms. Clark, who is on the phone, and I'm ceding control of the show to you, so you can tell us, as part and parcel of the Health Promotion Unit and their own activities, where we are, what this entails, and what efforts we have as we continue to try to sensitize the general public.
Good evening, one and all. As Ms. Clark correctly said, we're talking about universal insurance as it relates to World Health Day. In terms of our own process here in St. Kitts and Nevis, the stage at which we are is that the policy framework has been submitted by the consultants and is with government now. And we're hoping that government will, in the not too distant future, treat with this policy framework and advise us as to where they wish to go so that we can move our people and our country forward in terms of universal health insurance. The regular listeners would know that I believe that healthcare is a right, a basic human right, and we have to move down this road in removing the prohibitive cost of healthcare from the access to quality healthcare. I will not go into depth, as even though I'm looking at the document, it's a very lengthy document, some 75 pages. I don't think we'll have time tonight to go through the entire document and to speak to what it entails in detail. But we just want to let the public know this process is ongoing. It is continuing. We're closer to the end of the beginning than at the start of the beginning, meaning all of the consultations are done, the consultants have given their recommendations, and we have to wait on the politicians to let's say the government in our scenario, to make a decision as to which of the recommendations that the consultants and us have put together, which of those recommendations that they will take on board. Asila, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just a point of clarification, actually. The policy framework has been drafted, and it's a local document. Let me put that foremost, because the consultants did their evaluative work. The commission combined the expectations and responses from the general public in order to create the policy framework. It has not yet been submitted to Cabinet because one key component is the actuarial study, which we have a consultant that is financed through PAHO and government Combined, who is doing the projections for sustainability of the system. So that is the last peg that we're waiting on. But the public should know that the commission has done its work based on the formal reports from the consultants, taking into consideration their views and expectations. All that we're waiting on now is the supporting actuarial study, which will provide the government a comprehensive viewpoint as to what it will cost now and in the long term for the combination of aspects that we want to build to create a national system.
Okay, let me ask a question that I believe everybody's asking. I'm a member of the public, and so I want to know, what really does this all mean for Mr. Smith down the road, or Miss Bessie up in Rollins or up in Molyneux? What does this really mean? I mean, to have this health insurance, when they have, whether it's their diabetes, whether they have hypertension, whether they have glaucoma, they have problems with the hip, what really does it mean for them? For the average, I hate that language, but I'll use it anyway, the average resident or citizen of this country.
What it means is that there will now be a system that moves payment for health-related services from post-service to pre-service. We say that is instead of, you normally have to pay after you receive the service or the person has calculated what is required to treat you. And for many, that unknown affects their ability to even step forward to access care. Because you would have an indication, because you're paying for that upfront, to the report proposes what we call a plate effect. It has a number of options to finance the system, one of which would be direct contributions from the working population of St. Kitts and Nevis. Because you're already paying that contribution directly, then you would be able to, where any co-payments are required, understand what that balance would be. It will ensure that through that prepayment that you now have unencumbered access to the benefit package that is approved. When we say the benefit package, is that there are very few systems that can finance all medical treatment at the beginning of a system. So once it is determined what that benefit package is and how it will grow from year to year in order to service the needs of the population. And anybody that does analysis would know that you oftentimes start with the predominant needs. Those will include our non-communicable diseases, primary care so that we can remain ahead of the curve, and our preventative care systems. But as we know, non-communicable diseases bring about some additional complications, and that system would be able to cover those. We've also heard from the general public about autoimmune and these additional diseases that may not be as prevalent, but the cost associated with care can lead to the same, what we call financial ruin owing to medical treatment.
Okay, let me ask something else. We often have a situation where people do have health insurance. Some of our population are covered, whether through work, their jobs, or they've done the responsible thing and bought a policy with one of the insurance companies. Oftentimes, what I recognize is that the insurance companies require individuals to pay first, and then later would refund them. Right?
Correct.
That being the case, I am asking whether what is the position in relation to that? How would that work? So going back to my example of Mr. Smith and Miss Bessie, they have a problem. The health insurance is now in effect, the universal health insurance, and they go to their doctor. The doctor says, well, this ailment that you have is going to cost X amount or Y amount, as the case may be, and they now want to clearly get the treatment. Is it that they're going to have to come up with any money? Because I know some of the insurance companies and the government in Nevis, we have a scheme that's in place and we deal with it nearly every week at Cabinet. But we know a situation where some come and it's sort of 80% or thereabouts that the insurance would cover. And so many people have to come up with that 20%. But even where they have insurance, the insurance companies normally are going to pay after the fact. So how does that help me if I have to rush and go to Trinidad for care, or I have to rush and have an emergency operation done at JNF or Alexandra Hospital or whatever the case may be? I'm just trying to help me to understand so we can help the public to understand how it is anticipated that this might work. I understand we don't yet have an established or an agreed framework, but I just want to know for the people out there who are accustomed to having insurance and understanding that they are often required to fund and then get a refund. And in any event, when they fund and get that refund only usually covers about 80%.
Yes, the reason for that practice is, with the exception of one local firm, all other insurance companies do not have established contracts or agreements with service providers that permit the individual to only pay what is their responsibility at the point of service. With the National Healthcare System, because there will be contracts with service providers and agreed upon fee schedules, the individuals will know what portion of your medical treatment is covered by National Health Care. That portion is paid only by National Health Care. The service provider cannot ask you to pay the portion that National Health Care is responsible for. The service provider files that billing with National Health Care. Whatever is the portion, we call it copay. It could be as little as 0, it could be as much as 30%. Whatever that is the only portion that the individual now pays at the point of service consumption.
Okay. We have had clearly examples in the region. We had the medical benefits scheme in Antigua that went off the rails, led to inquiries and I believe even some criminal charges being brought and the like. We have conversely here in St. Kitts and Nevis had a good history and track record with Social Security, for example. What is the structure that is being proposed? Is it intended to be a structure where, say, Social Security would manage this fund, or is it intended to set up an entirely new scheme with an entirely new structure, which would coexist with other things like Social Security? What is being proposed?
The person's recommendation aligned with the public that we were able to engage with, that said, for our system, it is best that it be a subsidiary of Social Security because the infrastructure is similar in that your contributions will be paid from your working population. Social Security already has that information on both employer and employees. They have a system of compliance checks going out to the workplaces as well as to the individuals. And they have a system of collection from salary deductions that is beyond repute. What it does allow us to, however, is to have Social Security shepherded and then based on what we call key performance indicators. Once the system continues to function as it should, as is done as being considered right now in the British Virgin Islands, an eventual move towards a statutory entity to fully manage the national healthcare system, because one of the additional components is the research and development component of national healthcare, because now you have a database of all of the health diagnosis and situations of every national, that along with the epidemiologists at the Ministry of Health can allow us to be very proactive in our approaches to treating our population. And that, to me, as a social scientist, is quite exciting. And if we can truly build out a system like that, it can rebound to our benefit as a small island developing state.
Okay, Dr. Rollins, Ms. Clark has been quite eloquent, I think. She has answered very easily question that I had, in my own mind, sought to qualify as hard questions. So what can you add to, again, in the effort to enlighten the general public as to where we are? In the context of the recommendations, would people's salary be deducted so that they can pay? Would the government be asked to pay? What are some of the recommendations? We understand, again, and let me make it clear, that the framework has not yet been settled. So I'm only asking about what the recommendations look like.
The recommendations are, there are several recommendations. One, which is in all of the options, is payroll deduction. Similar to Social Security, where those persons who are employed, there would be a payroll deduction of a percentage to be determined. In addition to that, there are options of a matching fee from employers.
Employers.
So the employees and
so like Social Security.
Similar to Social Security. Okay. We looked at options in the BVI and in other surrounding jurisdictions which have done this before. And there are several options. One is payroll deduction matched by the employer. Another option is just the employee alone that pays it in some of these areas. So we have to decide which option we will choose, and that is based upon how much money we actually will need to fund the service per year. And based on Social Security numbers, because Social Security has the figures, the actuarial folks will be able to determine how much money we will need to fully run healthcare in St. Kitts and Nevis, not just government healthcare in the entire nation. We need to make that clear.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And in terms of persons who you mentioned persons who have their own private health insurance, we would not be asking those persons to give up their private health insurance. Here's the reason why. Universal health insurance does not cover all 100% of healthcare. We cannot do that. No system would really do that, and especially, as Azila said, in the early stages, in the infancy of a universal health insurance. So, for instance, your private insurance may be able to provide your copay. For instance, based on your income, your copay may be 0. But based on your income and the services required, your copay can be 20%, let's say for overseas care. So if the universal health insurance is paying for 80% of your overseas care within network, then your private insurance can come up with the other 20% so that you don't have to come up with money out of pocket at the time when you're critically ill and need money. And we all know healthcare is awfully expensive. So the idea of having your private insurance, that is still something that you should keep if you have it and you can afford to keep it.
Well, I'm happy you add if you can afford to keep it, because I think, what do you say to those who might argue, well, if the government going to take out my money to put towards this health care scheme, why should I continue to maintain insurance privately? Or even to those employers, say you take a Four Seasons or a TDC or one of those, who might be now providing insurance coverage to their workers. Can they now say, well, there is no need? It's redundant now because there's a scheme that the government is putting in place, and they therefore take that off their books. It is one less expense for those companies. How do you respond to that kind
of it depends
argument?
On the option that is chosen here. For instance, if the employer is matching the funds from the employee, then that may be an option. But if the employer is not asked to match the funds from the employee, then I don't think that should be an option. So it depends on what's accepted at the end of the day.
Now let me ask, I was privy to some of the consultations. I commend you, Ms. Clark and Mr. Rollins, and I think Nicole Slack-Liebert, who was here with us, has moved on to other things now with PAHO. But I recall that you all had a series of town halls and discussions around the various communities. I think, if memory serves, I would have attended one at Bath that the team would have had. Do you get the sense that there is any appetite in the country for money to come out of people's salary? We have got to a point, I feel, in the country where people like the idea of putting in their pocket as much of what they earn as possible. In fact, I think it is a universal truism that people do not like to pay tax, even when you say to them that this is an investment in yourself. So if I'm young and healthy, and when we are young and healthy, we feel that we're invincible. That is the nature of the human makeup. So only when we get to my age, we start to worry about illness and the potential for sickness. But when you're 25 and you're in the pink of health, you tend to feel like, well, boy, I can't be bothered with that. And so what was your sense from your consultations throughout the length and breadth of Nevis and St. Kitts in terms of people's appetite to pay for health care through a salary deduction or through some other mechanism? Ms. Clark, are you still there?
No problem, yes. What I can say is, we asked that question, how willing would you be to pay? And many persons, a majority of them said yes, but there was a caveat. In St. Kitts and Nevis, our Housing and Social Development Levy, the name of it causes ordinary Kittitians concern, because they're figuring, I'm already paying for social development type programs, why isn't health a part of it? So they have asked that we look at what is already paid in on behalf of such social protection, social development type programs, and for the state to look at cushioning the impact that a direct, a new salary deduction or contribution would result in. So as Dr. Wallins was indicating, the plate that is being recommended has payroll deductions. It does recommend a allocation from the existing housing and social development levy that is collected. It does have some annual transfers and grants that come from government source financing, because there are populations that has been accepted as the responsibility of the whole. Those populations are children and our seniors, disabled, and disadvantaged. And so as national health care is open to all persons who have paid or on whose behalf a contribution is paid, it is a requirement that that plate be reflective of the same. So there was an understanding from what we gathered, the persons that came out to the town halls and our consultations with public servants, that yes, we do recognize that simply because of what everybody experiences as health costs, we would need to make additional contributions. They're also asking for the state to look at its collection mechanisms, maximize what it already does, and see what can also be transferred there. And all of those form part of the recommendation.
Okay, we are about 25 minutes to the hour of 9 o'clock. Any last words, Ms. Clark, from you?
Certainly. First, of course, we want to thank the population of St. Kitts and Nevis for coming out in their numbers, engaging with us at town hall meetings, calling, meeting us on the site to be able to contribute. We take our responsibility very seriously. As soon as that actuarial review is presented, the same will be put forward. We ask for persons to, and we'll continue with the communications, to have an understanding that it is the intention in the definition of universal health care calls for quality services, financial protection for all. So while on the one end we are taking care of the financial protection, we also want to encourage persons to contribute to the quality of service. We know we are not a survey people, but you're going to have to be able to open up and have information flow through the system so it can serve you in the best right. And I just hope that we are ready to fully understand that responsibility, in that the system that we want is based on what we contribute to it, not just financially, but also as users and beneficiaries.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, before both of you go, and Dr. Rollins, you're in the studio here with me, so I will have you give a last word as well. But I didn't ask this, and I'm sure members out there, would there be any option to opt out? If I can afford to buy private insurance and I say, I don't want anything to do with any government scheme, can I opt out, or will it be mandatory, as indeed Social Security is mandatory?
It will be mandatory. The population census of 2011 says actually it's only between 30 and 35% of the population that is covered by insurance, either individually or through their employer. So there's between a 70 and 65% of the population that is not. And that is untenable when it comes to the issues of health. So the government, the state, the structures that run a country have a responsibility to secure the majority. And a system like universal health care / national health insurance requires mandatory contribution from all persons. As you started this evening, that was one of the concerns raised. If I've done the diligent thing from since 18 and gotten health insurance, why am I now being asked? There's a principle similar to that of Social Security called solidarity. Those that have, look out for those who do not. Because we all feel the do not, because we all go to church and pay our extra tithes. We all get sponsorships and raffles and participate in the same. And our heart aches when we hear about children and persons who, just because of money, cannot access health care. And one of the systems designed to do that is this. So we all have to come on board, as the song says, all hands on deck on the issue of health care. Just hold us as accountable, as I know every Kitchener division will, because once money is taken from our salaries, we're always astute to what is done with it.
Well, you sound very eloquent on that. But what about those people who are not in the position of that poor sick child that you mentioned, but are just profligate with what they have? A lot of people out there, and I've said it, and I know I got myself into trouble for saying it some years ago. I said to some of the young men, particularly those in construction, instead of every Friday drinking 20 Guinness in town, why not take some of that money and buy a little health insurance policy? And going back to what I said about when you're young and healthy and you feel you're invincible, many people castigated me, say I am trying to prevent people from having a little fun. So let us take you at 18 and me at 18. You and I have the same little job, making the same income. But you have a responsible head on your shoulders, and you go and you buy a little health insurance. And you've been paying diligently on that in the event that something happens to you or your loved ones. Yeah?
Correct.
I am the same 18, making the same pay like you, and I say, boy, I can't bother with that, you know. I gonna go party, I gonna go and see Buju, Banton, I gonna enjoy myself. Why is it that you are now being asked to pay for heat? Help me understand that.
Because we already are. As you clearly stated, every week your cabinet is inundated with requests. What we also want citizens to understand is the funds that are paid out to the system in Ministry of Health and Ministry of Social Services here already comes from our pockets. What the additional point to national health care, universal health care, is that we're not in the business of treating illness. We're in the business of keeping people healthy, because we can never keep abreast of illness treatment. So the 18-year-old who has done right, as Dr. Rollins said, it doesn't mean that you have to drop your policy from day one, because as we've always encouraged employers and individuals with insurance, when the package is released, you have to do an assessment. Is this package better than what I have? If it is not there yet, it is in your best interest to keep what you have until it regulates, and possibly, depending on your health profile and what your needs are, you may need to have the two in place. Understanding, however, that for payment purposes, the national health care system will always pay first, followed by your private insurance.
Okay, Dr. Rollins, hold your thought. I just want to ask one last thing, because we're running out of time on this. But I asked whether or not in your surveys and your interviews and your town halls that you got a sense that the general public was minded to pay. One of the options, as I understand it, is for employers to contribute something. Did you get a sense from the business community as to whether or not they were minded to contribute?
We are actually awaiting a response from the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, because the consultants did give a recommended rate. And the division of the rate, whether it be equal, like Social Security is 5-5, or you do a more responsibility on the individual or more responsibility on the business. So we are waiting that formal response from the Chamber as to what will be their recommendation for it, because we were cognizant of the fact that they already have a tax burden to bear which is unique to them. Even under the Social Security scheme, they're the only ones that pay the 1% employment injury and their corporation taxes, and some of them their corporate responsibility.
And the severance pay and all of that?
Yes. So we don't want to stifle business, because that is a base for other economic development. But recognizing what we have seen in that the major employers in St. Kitts and Nevis already have a practice of covering the same, as you indicated earlier. If it is their decision, based on what the rate is and how it's divided, it may actually come from some of what they already pay. Because that is the conversation the government is having. because the government as an employer will also have to make that consideration. What do I let go that is covered by universal health care? And then how do I reallocate the funds saved to do something else or to make my contributions to the state?
Okay. Any final word, Dr. Rollins?
In terms of the two young folks you mentioned, one who drinks and parties a lot, there are also recommendations here for certain increase in taxes, such as on alcohol, tobacco, and those sort of stuff.
Sweet drinks.
And sweet drinks, etc. In an effort to, one, to raise some funds to keep the public healthy and to treat when they're ill, but more importantly, to serve as a deterrent to help guide the behavioral habits of our population so that we all can live healthier lives.
Okay. Ms. Clark, thank you very much. We're out of time, but thank you for taking the time to join us, and thank you for your diligence and hard work in putting together something that would be truly revolutionary for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Dr. Rollins, thank you as well for being here. Thank you for being here with us. Before you go, Dr. Rollins, I've been asked to advertise the fact that there will be the first ever junior chef competition hosted by the Health Promotion Unit in collaboration with the Ministry of Education. It is slated for Monday the 15th of April from 1 to 4 p.m. at the NEPAC Courtyard. 9 primary schools in Nevis will compete for the coveted prize of Junior Chef 2019 trophy. Junior Chef 2019. So there will be a Junior Chef competition Monday the 15th, April, 1 to 4 p.m. at NEPAC Courtyard. And just how the parents and fans came out for inter-primary, they should come out and support these youngsters as they compete in the Junior Chef competition for Junior Chef of the Year trophy 2019. I think it's a very interesting initiative. I myself am learning how to cook, so I don't know, maybe I'm too old for the Junior Chef. If it was based on skills level, I believe I could participate. But since it looked to me to be an age thing, then I'll be left out. I see my friend from Dominica shaking his head, but I know he can't cook for sure, so I'm not too worried about that. But good initiatives. I have always admired the work of the Health Promotion Unit. You are in the vanguard of health and healthcare here in Nevis as well, Dr. Rollins. And so do you have any parting words for us as the Health Promotion Unit continues its drive?
Actually, our Health Promotion Unit is doing a very good job. And in this particular program, what they're doing is actually trying to change the eating habits of our children. Because if you really want to change the behavior of the children, they will actually change the parents. The children have more sway over the parents these days than the parents over the children, it seems. And if you change the eating habits of our children, their behavioral habits, then you could change the society in the long run. So this is a very good way of encouraging better eating habits in our children, which could redound to healthier population going forward.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Rollins, thank you for all the efforts. And again, the Health Promotion Unit will be hosting on the 15th of April from 1 to 4 p.m. at Courtyard, the first ever Junior Chef competition where all 9 primary schools will compete. Thank you. That is it for the discussion from the Health Promotion Unit side. Thank you very much for that. Now, I just want to announce to the general public that I have had word that we have lost a loved one. Mr. Kenrick Liebert has passed away, and he leaves to mourn his wife Enid, his children Issaret Tracy, Laverne Samuel, and their grandchildren. I know Tracy very well, wonderful person. Tracy, if you're listening, I want to extend my deep condolences to you, to Enid, and of course to Laverne and the grandchildren. I would also want to extend very deep condolences to the entire family, the Thompson family there in Brown Hill, all of the Thompsons. I know that they are very deeply concerned, and so I would extend my deep condolences, Tracy, to you and the family, and to the Thompson family as well, on the passing of your dad, Kenrick Liebert. Don't know if you're listening, but if you are, please know that our prayers are with you, and that we continue to pray for you, that God will comfort you in this your hour of bereavement. And as I say and always say, may the prayers of the multitude comfort you at this very difficult time. Now we're going to switch gears. This is On the Mark. If you just tuned in, I'm your host, Mark Brantley, and we are having a series of discussions this evening of different kinds. Now, the general public would know that I am a huge fan of small businesses, and I believe that it is important that we continue to encourage and promote our small businesses. As a matter of fact, I have started now, it looks like a tradition where on weekends I go around to the various bars and restaurants and the like and seek to spend some time with people, yes, but also seek to advertise the business that they have and what it is they're seeking to do. It is very important, I feel, that we support our own, that we buy local wherever possible, and we continue to support local businesses. It is not enough for us to simply give lip service. We have to go out and actually support. And oftentimes, we know the attitude here seems to be that anything foreign is better, and anything that you can buy from someone who's not your own is better. And I'm saying that the only way we're going to advance is for us to start to ensure that money continues to circulate inside the economy. We have a lot of young people, a lot of people who are being very innovative and are producing world-class ideas that they've brought to market. And we have here with us this evening young Anthony Gauger. And Anthony Gauger is here because he's a representative of a Carib Pay. This is a new payment method that has been introduced here in the Federation. It is designed locally in the sense that the people behind it are locals, citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, people who have the technical know-how and the intellectual capacity, and they've created this system that is Carib Pay. And I will introduce Mr. Gauger. Mr. Gauger, welcome to On The Mark. It's your first time here. But to say to the public that the reason why I had a conversation with Mr. Gauger some time ago, that he wanted to come on The Mark, is clearly to take advantage of the large platform that we have. It's widely listened to at home and abroad. But also to have an opportunity to explain to the public what this Carib Pay system does, why it is good for you. Now, I was very impressed when I spoke to Mr. Gauger and his team. Very impressed because this Carib Pay system does look like it can solve a lot of problems. For one, it is cashless. And that means that merchants and others don't have to worry about those fellows who might want to rob them or take what they have unlawfully, because it is cashless. And it seems, based on what the explanations I've had from Mr. Gauger and others, that it is fairly foolproof as well. It is a safe system, has high degrees of security, which I'm hoping that he will describe. But Mr. Gauger, welcome. Thank you for being here. And if you can, let the public know a bit about Carib Pay and what it is about and what it is seeking to do.
Well, first of all, good night to all. Premier Brantley, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to say hello to all of those tuned in the Federation and abroad. So, Carib Pay. I can't start talking about Carib Pay first without, say, introducing the team, telling you some about the team. One of our co-founders would be Dawn Liebert. She is a certified public accountant with over 20 years of experience in financial services and auditing and public accounting. Dion Herbert, who is online. He's
calling in.
He's calling in.
Oh,
okay.
Hello. Mr. Herbert is on the line. Okay, well, if Mr. Herbert is on the line, since you're here, and I assume he's calling in. Mr. Herbert, can you hear us?
Yeah, good evening, Premier Brantley, and yes, I can hear you guys loud and clear.
Okay, you've called in as Mr. Gauger was getting into his spiel and was telling us all about Carib Pay. So what is it you have to tell us that Mr. Gauger was going to miss?
Yeah, so I'm listening, and I'm just calling in to support Anthony, Mr. Gauger, as he's doing. So he's doing a good job already, so I'll just be quiet, and then there's some questions that I can help with, and I'll be sure to chime in and help with those questions.
Well, Mr. Gauger just identified you as one of the founders or co-founders of this Carib Pay. And since clearly you are one of the co-founders, maybe you're the best placed person to answer the question, why was Carib Pay developed in the first place? Why did you think there was a need for this type of platform?
Okay, sure, I can help answer that question. So Carib Pay was developed, incidentally, was developed in Nevis. The idea was conceived in Nevis. And if a few years ago, a popular local restaurant that you frequented when it was open was up for sale, and I really wanted to buy that restaurant. And it was the same time when the crime was started getting out of control in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I was going to ask my mom and other family members to kind of manage the operation, since I'm not on the island all the time. And it came down to the fact that I couldn't ask anybody that I care about, my mom or any family member, to actually be associated with a business that will have them take home cash at night or be perceived to be taking home cash at night. Mm-hmm. And, that really bothered me. I complained a lot. And my wife turned to me one day and said, why don't you stop complaining about the problem and try to fix it? So I like a challenge. So, I pulled out a napkin and we started talking and we started designing the system. And, fundamental tenet of the system had to be that the system had to work without reliance on internet access, because we know that the internet can be flaky. And, all around the world, people have electronic systems of payments. You pull out your phone, you do Apple Pay, you do Google Pay, and so on. But for us to depend on it, we had to have the right infrastructure. And I didn't feel like St. Kitts and Nevis, this telephone system, the internet system, had the right infrastructure. And then I felt like if we built something that depended on a system, on infrastructure that wasn't reliable, then people would just fall back to going back and getting cash all the time. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't want that. So one fundamental design tenet was that it must work without internet access. And that's one of the things you'll hear Mr. Gager talk about, is how CaribPay works without internet access. So whenever you go to buy something on the side of the road from somebody, you can buy what you want. The person will never tell you, system is not working, the system is down, you can't buy what you want. So that's the fundamental thing, and that's the key difference of how it's different between credit cards and debit cards and CaribPay.
Okay, all right. Let's stay on the line. I think that's a good segue, Mr. Gager, into asking you, well, how does the system work? Here we have Mr. Herbert saying that it was a concern that he had about the vulnerability of businesses to crime and the people who are perceived to have cash, mm-hmm. and their vulnerability. Mm-hmm. They could be targeted by criminals. And so he wanted to solve that problem. And I did in my introduction say that based on all the conversations I've had with you, this is a cashless system. So how does it work? If the man who owns a shop up in Rollins or down in Sadler's listening right now, and he says, boy, I really would want to get away from this cash, having $500, $2,000 in my pocket, because I may be a target for people who have bad intentions. How do you persuade that individual that CaribPay is the answer for them?
Well, the first step for him to get involved would be to sign up on the CaribPay website at caribpay.com. That's Carib with an E. He would then fill out the consumer application, followed by the merchant application. Shortly after these applications are filled out, we would get in contact with him. We'd make sure he gets his card. He would make sure he gets his CaribPay terminal to accept the CaribPay card for all CaribPay consumers, all CaribPay cardholders. We would also then highlight all of the benefits and show him exactly how the CaribPay system works and how easy it is. So the CaribPay system terminal does not require internet to accept any card payments. Mm-hmm. So that is one of the advantages we would highlight to him. So assuming he does not have internet at his business already, mm-hmm. he doesn't have to worry about, okay, I need to go to one of the...
So if you're a coconut vendor, if you're a bus driver,
right? So you're a
you
bus
can
driver,
use the CaribPay because you don't need any internet.
It doesn't matter,
okay,
right?
Good.
So that would be one of the advantages.
Okay.
The second advantage we would highlight to him will say, hey, you want to go cashless, but what are your options? Your options would be going to the banks, or your options would technically be coming to a company like CaribPay. Again, a small vendor now cannot, say, afford some of the fees associated with accepting Visa or MasterCard. Mm-hmm. So whereas, for example, Visa or MasterCard accepting it may cost that merchant 4% per transaction. So someone comes in, their bill is $100, he accepts that Visa card, but he's only holding $96 mm-hmm. out of that transaction.
Sure.
Whereas with accepting CaribPay, he would be actually retaining $99, because CaribPay only charges 1% per card transactions. Okay, so that would be another advantage that we of having CaribPay. Mm-hmm. One, it doesn't require you to go and get internet access, internet if you don't have internet, because our system can work without internet. And then two, it would also be cheap on him. All right. So those would be two of the
Okay, well, get me now, drill down a bit now, right? So, Miss Punsi listening to you right now, right? And she's saying this thing, sound fancy. All around the world, we know that cash is king. Regardless of what people say, a man feels good when he have some cash in his pocket. When you walk down the street and you can feel it in your pocket, you feel good about it. And that feel-good feeling is something that we all have. And so that is why cash remains king in many, many instances. So I want you to you've mentioned some very good reasons. It's a lot cheaper than a credit or debit card. It is incredible that this works without internet. When you first told me that, to be honest, I didn't believe you. So I had to go and check. And then it came back, and I talked to a few vendors who said, yes, it is true. You don't need internet for this thing to work. And that, I think, Mr. Herbert, as one of the designers, I think that is absolutely phenomenal. Because that really means that the farmer up in Rollins, up in Phillips Mountains in St. Kitts, the fisherman down in Jessops, or down there in Newtown, that individual, the man who's selling the cane juice, the man who's selling the jelly, all of those individuals can use this because they do not require internet.
Correct.
They don't need Wi-Fi. They don't need any of that. They could use it. So that, I think, is incredible. But I'm trying to understand, how does the system work? So you said people should go to carrypay.com and fill out the forms, and you'll contact them and all that. But break down a transaction for me.
Okay, so the system is Caripay has its own prepaid system, okay? So all of us would be familiar with prepaid systems. A lot of us have prepaid cell phones where you top up your phone ahead of time, and then you make calls, then you have data, so on and so forth. So it's the same thing with Caripay. You top up your card. For a consumer would go on the website as well to sign up. We would then get them their card. After they receive their card, the next step would be to top up your card at one of our top-up agents. To name a few, we would go to A1 office, you would go to MEMS, you can go to Zone 1 Auto, also known as Franchette, if you're in St. Kitts, as far as Sandy Point, E&K Supermarket, if you're in Ford Street, Dem Times Bar. Those are just some of the top-up agents you can go to get funds into the system. So you said top-up.
So I want $100 on my card.
Yes.
So I go to A1 or MEMS or wherever, and I give them the $100.
Correct.
Just like I would do with the phone top-up.
Correct. That's one way to get money into the system.
Okay.
Yes.
So I give them, and they have something that they do.
Yes. So they have the Caripay device. You would then hand them your card. They would then place the card on the device, and credit your card. Okay.
So now I have my card topped up with $100. I go down the street now and I want to buy lunch, which is going to cost me $25. How does the transaction work?
So what happens now is you go in, the cashier would have the Caripay terminal. They enter the $25, they take your card, and they place your card against the machine. When they place your card against the machine, your picture will pop up. Okay, so that is one of the security features. That is one of the security features that Caripay has implemented into its system, that compared to a debit card where you would have to create a 4-digit PIN in order to use your card, for Caripay, cashiers would verify customers by simply looking at their picture that is embedded into the card that will pop up on the Caripay terminal. So no matter who uses their card, everyone that uses their card, your picture is saved on the card and would always appear on a Caripay terminal.
So let me ask you now. So I steal your card, right? So you just put on your $100 by MEMS, and you come down the road and your card falls out of your pocket. I come down after I pick up the card and I say, wow, today's my lucky day. Let me go buy Bourgeois in town and buy lunch, right? So I go and I have a nice lunch, $25, and I go to pay. What happens?
Once the cashier takes the card from you and they scan that card, my picture will pop up. So now they know, well, this is not the true owner of the card, and they will not accept that they will not process that transaction at that point in time.
Okay. So that's a very interesting, I think, security feature. And you're right, because if it's a debit or credit card, once they have the 4-digit PIN, they can process the card.
Right.
Can process the payment. Okay. Now, going back to you, Mr. Herbert, you still there?
I'm still here.
Yeah. I want to ask you, because in terms of how it's set up, so I think Mr. Gage has explained quite eloquently that even I could understand how you put money onto the card. But he said something else in his explanation. He said that if he goes, and I'm using, I hope Buju doesn't mind, I'm using him as the example. I'm giving some free advertising tonight. He has great food. Buju in the heart of town. So if you go by Buju and you put the card for the 25, it presupposes that Buju has a terminal. So how does that work? I mean, does it mean therefore that part of your business model is you have to bring businesses on board to have your terminal? Because, for example, if it is a credit card, then anybody who has a credit card can use it by Buju, because Buju has a credit card terminal. But it seems to me that you're saying that Buju must have a CarryPay terminal in order to process it. So how does that work?
Yes, that's exactly what we're saying. So our business is very similar to the credit card business in that a credit card, in order for you to use your credit card at Buju had to have signed up with the bank and gone through, a longer process to get that credit card machine, and then you can use your debit card or your credit card.
Yeah, but the difference is, and that's why I'm asking the question, if I go by Buju, I look in my pocket, I have MasterCard, Visa, Amex, whatever. Most times, whichever card, frankly for me, whichever have money in it, is the one that I go and use. And so the credit card machine normally has the ability to process a Visa card or MasterCard or whatever. Whereas it seems to me I'm hearing from you that the CarryPay terminal is really for CarryPay.
Correct.
Yes, that's exactly what we're saying. It is for CarryPay. You need a specific terminal in order to process the CarryPay card transactions. And so remember that Mr. Gager was saying earlier that our system works offline.
Yes.
So those credit card machines cannot work offline, right? So if you go there now and internet is off or something, you cannot use your credit card or your debit card. And so the reason why we're able to offer the offline transaction is because we have a specific terminal that knows how to speak to or how to access only our card. So a random debit card or credit card machine cannot access our card. So to go a little bit into the technical weeds, our card is referred to as a stored value card. And what that means is that the money, there's a digital representation of your money on the card. And so when the machine accesses the card, the machine updates the balance on the card. So if you use your $100 example topped up by MEMS and then you go by Buju and spend 25, the machine updates the balance on your card. And so you're always walking around with a card that represents how much money you have. The key difference here is that debit cards and credit cards don't know how much money you have. The machine has to contact the bank. Whenever you swipe your debit card or your credit card, the machine connects to the bank and find out, should I approve this transaction or not, because it's tied to your bank account. With CarryPay, no bank account is needed. All you need is your CarryPay card to work and do your transactions. So yes, the team has been doing a really great job onboarding businesses, and we have over 100, and I think we're approaching 150 businesses in St. Kitts and Nevis actually. So the business community has been responding really well to the system.
Well, let me ask you, because I travel a lot, and certainly based on what you're saying to me, that, for example, I go into a store in New York to buy a pair of shoes. If I have my CarryPay card, it won't work unless that store is signed up with CarryPay, right?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay, good. So oftentimes the problem I have with my credit cards when I try to use them is that if you were to do a number of transactions or you were to do a large value transaction, you often have a problem. And sometimes if I travel, particularly where I'm in a different time zone, it can be real problematic because they tell you they have to call your bank because, the triggers for, I suppose, to prevent fraud. It seems to me that based on what Mr. Gager is saying, that you would not have that problem with your CarryPay card because once that merchant is signed up, as you say, you're actually walking around with how much money you have on the card itself.
Correct.
So if you use it 100 times, it doesn't matter because all it does, it keeps deducting until you're down to zero.
Yeah,
would that be accurate?
Correct. You're absolutely correct. The card has a representation of your money on it. It's called a wallet, believe it or not. The card has a chip in it, and the chip is referred to as a wallet, and it works just like a wallet. If you put 100 in there and you spend 10, then it knows that you only have 90. And so that is why it doesn't need internet access to figure out how much money you have. So no matter where you go, you can spend and spend and spend, and when it's all done, just like your cell phone, when the credit is up, you can't call anybody. It's the same thing. when your credit is up on the CarryPay card, you cannot, you won't be able to spend anymore. Luckily for you, we have the top-up agents all around St. Kitts and Nevis, so it's easy for you to get money back into the system.
So let me ask you this. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on one other thing. The way to get money into the system, you know, Mr. Gager mentioned that topping up with cash, and that's one way to get money into the system. But there's also other ways. You can do a direct deposit from your employer directly into CarryPay, so you can eliminate that step of going over to one of the top-up agents and topping up, right? If you have a CarryPay account, you can walk into your employer and say, hey, I have this CarryPay account. Here's my account number. I would like you to send some of my salary to CarryPay on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and then you can get the money directly into your CarryPay, into the CarryPay system.
Mm-hmm.
And once that money is in there, you can do very similar things to what you do with cash, right? You can send some of it to your kids. You know, you can sign up children because the children, if they, you can sign up your kids and actually send money to them instead of pulling out your cash and giving it to them and so on. So there are a lot of different advantages of using CarryPay that eliminates the use of cash, but still makes it convenient so you can do the things that you wanted to do anyway.
Okay. Very interesting in terms of the technology, very interesting in terms of what you're doing. How old is this company now? How long have you been in the market?
So we launched in St. Kitts and Nevis officially. Actually, we just passed 1 year anniversary where in March 2018 is when one of the stars on our team, Calva Swanston, started going around and harassing people in Nevis and asking them and telling them about CarryPay. So it's 1 year. However, it took us about 4 years prior to that, building the technology, finding the right people from around the world to help, to help us to implement the technology that we wanted to implement. We designed it and we found the right people to help implement it.
Well,
so it took us about 4 years to get that together. And then licensing, we had to go through an arduous licensing process that took 1.5 years to get licensed. But you understand that we're dealing with people's money, and so they had to do their due diligence in order to make sure that that we were on the up and up and everything was good with the company. So our license, we're licensed by Financial Services Regulatory Commission to get that done.
Okay, now let me just ask you, because I've had and I'm sure a lot of us have had the experience where we go and we have a very nice meal, or we go and we take up something that we really like in the store, and then you go up and they tell you your credit card is declined because you didn't pay the bill and you're over your limit or whatever the case may be. What happens in the case of CarryPay? So I have $500 on my card and I go and I take up an item that is $600. What happens when I go up and try to pay for that item? I'm saying, what's the process?
So when you do go and you're going to pay for that item, the terminal would read a low balance error. Okay, so again, it is a store valued card, so the terminal is reading the balance on the card.
Mm-hmm.
So because, as you said, you only have 500, the terminal is able to pick up, well, this card only has $500 on it. It does not have enough credit, therefore it will not let the transaction go through.
Okay, so...
Okay. But before you get to, if I can just add a little bit to that, before you get to the point where it says a low balance error, each terminal has the ability to send the balance to the card owner. So the merchant, the business owner, can never see what your balance on your card is. But they can just, you put your card next to the machine, and the business owner presses a button that says send balance, and the balance is sent to the card owner on their cell phone. So they'll get a text message that says your balance is, $500 in your example. And so then you, as the card owner, can make a determination. Oh, I only have $500. Let me try to get something cheaper. So they know right away, and they can save themselves from the hassle of trying to charge something and then it doesn't go through. So you're never in the dark with the CarryPay system. You know how much money you have, and you can always check your balance at any merchant, and they can send you a text message right away so you can see what is actually on your card.
Okay.
And then I'd like to add that after every transaction, if that merchant system is online, you get a text message as well as a consumer. So it will say, you just spent $10 at MEMS. Your balance is now $90. Or you just spent $5 at Poor Man's Bar in Rollins, and now your balance is $80, like that. So you always know what's going on.
Okay, so I'm Miss Ponce selling black pudding down by the pier, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm listening to you, and you sound real good. But I know right now that I sell my black pudding is $5, and the person gave me the $5, I put that in my pocket. So I'm listening to this program, and CarryPay sounds very interesting, because I want to get away from the cash and handling cash. What would it cost me to sign up?
It's absolutely free. So signing up does not cost you anything. Okay, signing up as a consumer, kind of signing up as a merchant, it doesn't cost you anything. The merchant, again, as I mentioned earlier, would pay a 1% fee per transactions, but signing up is absolutely free.
So Miss Punsi, that's my example, selling black pudding, hearing this thing, doesn't need internet and doesn't have and cannot afford internet, wants to move away from the cash because she doesn't want any bad fellows to come look for her. And so she's listening tonight. So you're saying that she can contact you and get the system without having to pay.
Correct.
So it's free to her, and the only thing she does is when she sells the black pudding for $5, she pays 1%.
Correct.
Well, I don't know 1% of $5 what? 5 cents?
5 cents.
5 cents. So she pay 5 cents per black pudding, but she get this
Safety.
the safety and security of the card. She gets to move away from any handling of cash, and she gets $4.95 in her hand.
Correct.
When she thinks. Okay, let me ask you one last question now. So going back to my example of Miss Punsi selling black pudding down by the pier. She hears you, she likes what she's hearing, and she signs up. Before, she had the risk of the cash, but she had the cash in her pocket. Somebody gave her $5, she has $5. Now she's getting $4.95 from you because she's paying you 5 cents for the privilege of using your system. But how does she get that $4.95? Because tomorrow she has to go back to buy more ingredients to make more black pudding. So how does she convert that $4.95 into cash or into some other form that she can then go and transact? Or what if she wants, because Miss Punsi, a customer, when she finished selling on Saturday, on Monday morning she go in the bank and she put her money in the bank. So now she doesn't do that because she doesn't have any cash. She has carry pay. How does she convert her money into some other form, whether cash or whatever?
Well, that's a great question. A question we get asked often. So what would happen is when she received the money from a consumer, those funds would stay in her carry pay account. Okay. Initially, those funds would stay in her carry pay account. Now, it is now at her disposal. So, for instance, she also sells beers, right? And she wants to order a couple cases of drinks from TDC Drinks Depot. TDC Drinks Depot does accept carry pay.
Okay.
When that delivery driver comes to Miss Punsi, okay, she can say, well, okay, you know what? I have funds in my carry pay system. I can pay her through carry pay. Okay, so she can now either transfer those funds to her card, or if she had them there already, right? She can just simply pay TDC with the funds she already has in carry pay. So there's actually no need to really take the funds out of carry pay. But to answer your question, she wants it to transfer those funds into her bank. So now we would either pay her by a check or direct deposit. Okay, so if Ms. Punti says, I want my funds directly deposited to my account once a week, carry pay deposits it to her account once a week. If she says, I need a check once a week, carry pay gives her a check once a week.
And so you, Mr. Herbert, as the person behind this and one of the founders, what guarantee does Ms. Punsi have? Because, you know, Ms. Punsi is naturally suspicious of all this new technology. She's not accustomed to that. She make black pudding and she sell black pudding. So she hear this thing, it sounds good. Mr. Gager is saying that if she wants some money, you're going to send her direct deposit or check. What guarantee she has that you're going to do that?
Yes. So it's a great question. How does she know she's actually going to get her money? And how does she know how much money we owe her, right? And so every transaction that gets done on Miss Punsi's machine, if she has email or if she has a phone, she gets a text message that says, you just got $2 in income. You just got $7 in income. You just got $14 in income. Whatever it is, she has an electronic record of every transaction that happens. So she knows that she can just check her phone and see how much money carry pay has for her.
Yes.
And then she can also, if she said then she wants a check, then when she gets the check, she can say, oh, you know, you guys owe me $50 and your check is for $50, so everything is good. Or if the check is not for $50, she might ask, well, why isn't the check for $50? So she has a record and she knows exactly how much money is coming to her. So now I mentioned earlier that we had to go through a licensing process. So how does she know that how do you have to get the money? So we are required that whenever, let's say we use your example, you went by MEMS, you topped up $100, right? That $100, has to go into what we call a custodian account for that customer. The $100 does not belong to CarryPay, so we put that in an account aside for when the customer spends that money. So that money is always on hand, and as soon as that money gets spent, the money becomes Miss Punsi's money, and we just transfer it to her based on her instructions to us. So that's how she knows she'll get her money. And we pay people, most people we pay them the next day. So if there's a problem, you know tomorrow morning, or you know that there's a problem, if there's a problem, but there'll never be a problem. But just to know that it's not like we're going to owe somebody and then at the end of the month they find out that they can't get their money. They know next day that the money is paid. And as soon as the money is paid, Miss Punsi also gets a text message on her phone that says $50 was just deposited to your account at National Bank 12345, or whatever bank she told us to do it. Or if she requested a check, as soon as the system processes the check and prints out the check, she also gets a message again that says your check is ready, and then she'll get her check and so on. So we try to keep people as informed as possible about what's happening with their account. And not only that, right, so all these text messages, you might ask, well, what happened to Miss Punsi done where the peer and her phone falls over the board and now she doesn't have a record, right? All of those records are kept in Miss Punsi's account at CarryPay, so she can log in, or she can get her grandchildren to help her to log in, and she can see all the transactions that happened over the past 5 years in her account, because we're required to keep all the records for up to 5 years.
Okay, well, I think that is certainly excellent to know, and for businesses out there who are looking for a solution, who may not have internet, I think it's interesting, because I started off talking about small businesses, and I think that this is really something that for small, micro, medium businesses, this would be excellent. I mean, it could probably also work for large businesses. I think you have, as you said, TTC Drinks Depot and all of those who are on board already. Now, let me just ask you, in terms of amounts, you have limits? I mean, again, for my credit card, I can go in the bank, and based on my income or whatever my risk profile is, I could probably get a credit card with hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of a limit. So can we say TDC uses CarryPay accepted, so I want to go down and buy a car, so I can use my CarryPay card to buy a car? I mean, what do you do in terms of limits, in terms of how much you can top up, etc.? Are there limits?
Yes, there are limits.
Yes.
Yes.
Anthony, you can go ahead.
All right. So for the CarryPay prepaid card, the cards have a limit of 5,000 EC. Okay, so you cannot top up more than 5,000 EC. If you have on 4,000 and you try to put on 2,000, it won't put on the 2,000. Okay, you just have to start over, and it would only accept the extra 1,000. So the cards max out at 1,000 EC.
So 5,000.
5,000 EC.
Okay.
Correct. Now you also have the CarryPay app. Okay, you can actually, so in other words, you can use the CarryPay app to buy your car from TDC, because your CarryPay app does not have a limit. Okay, so you can load, again, large amounts of money into your CarryPay app. You would then use that app, your app account. You can also access on your laptop, on your desktop, on your computer. Okay, you have access to it online or on your phone. So you use the app to make large transactions to companies such as TDC.
Okay, all right, gentlemen, thank you for being here. Any parting words?
We'd just like to say thank you, first of all, for this opportunity. One last thing I would love to add is that CarryPay is also a solutions company. Okay, so CarryPay can create a number of solutions. We also provide a number of solutions for small to medium-sized businesses, corporations, even governments, that if, say, they have any problems in areas such as organization, productivity, time management, CarryPay can design a solution by using the technology that we have, and provide it to, as again, small to medium-sized businesses, corporations, or even governments. So we're not just a money services company, but a solutions company.
Okay. Any final word, Mr. Herbert?
I'd just like to say thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to come on and share with the public the technology that we have. I'd just like to underscore what Anthony said, that we are, the CarryPay system is one of the solutions that we have, but we also have, for example, Carry tickets. So now if you're traveling to St. Kitts or from St. Kitts to Nevis, you can sit at home on your porch and then you can actually buy your ticket to get on the next edition. And then when you show up at the pier in town, then you just walk straight onto the boat. You don't have to stop and buy a ticket at the booth. So we do have a bunch of other solutions that we're working on. So, we're asking the public to support us in our endeavors here to bring, make St. Kitts and Nevis and the rest of the Caribbean, hopefully, more to the cashless world. We think it's going to be safer for everyone else, and we're looking forward to the support from everyone. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your call, Mr. Herbert. Mr. Gager, thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you for your inaugural appearance on the Mark. I learned a lot, and I'm sure members out there, including Ms. Punsi, learned a lot as well. And so I am pretty certain that people are going to call. Just again, before you go, tell us how we sign up.
So you sign up at the Caripay website. So that is caripay.com. And you just hit the register. And
so caribepay.com.
Correct.
Okay, and you go there and register.
Yes.
Alternatively, are there numbers that people can call? I
Yes.
mean, is there a store? Where do people go?
Yes, so you can contact us at 669-2729. We also have an office in St. Kitts and an office in Nevis, but due to the nature of our work, we're normally always on the road. We normally come to consumers or to merchants. They just have to call us and we'll show up.
What's the number again?
So 669-2729.
669-2729, or they go to the website, caribepay.com.
Correct.
Okay.
You can also email us at info@caripay.com. So again, info@caribepay.com.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Gager. Thank you for being here. Okay, it is 25 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock. You know what? I just realized I started my show. I didn't even say good evening to the multitudes who listen. And so please forgive me for that. Good evening to everybody here in Nevis and St. Kitts, those in the wider Caribbean and those farther afield. We had really an exciting night so far. We had, of course, the experts on the National Health Insurance Scheme, and we just heard from the founder, one of the founders, Mr. Dion Herbert, and one of his employees here, Mr. Gager, Anthony Gager, and they were talking about Caripay. I feel very proud of these guys, let me say, because they're locals and they have designed something which is truly unique. I was very impressed to hear that you could have a system that does not depend on the internet, and that is why I could say that whether you're selling, breakfast in town, you're selling black pudding, you're selling cane juice, whatever it is you're doing, that this provides a solution and also insulates you from anybody trying to come and take what you have, because clearly there is no benefit to them because you have no cash. We will open the lines now and take some calls. We only have about 35 minutes left, and so we're going to turn the show over to the callers and hear what they have to say. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello? Hello? Okay, that call isn't there. Callers, please, we don't have a lot of time, so when you call, say what you have to say as quickly and as succinctly as you can. The numbers are 869-469-1616, 869-469-1700. Those are the numbers to call if you want to be a part of the show this evening. Let's go to the phones immediately and say good evening. You're on the mark.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening, my friend-in-law. How are you?
I'm well. Good to hear you. I haven't heard you in a while. How are you?
Yes, man. I'm good too, man. But I just try and listen when I could get it,
Yes.
Well, somebody sorry for me and they gave me a little radio, so it's only that could catch one.
Okay.
But anyway, I want to commend you for all the great job that you have been doing these years that I have made contact with you. But I've been hearing the report of the successes that you were able to accomplish when you travel and even when you're here. So keep it up.
Thank you, brother.
Now, short and sweet, and let me go. There is a caller from down here. He always calls on every radio station, and he has nothing good to commend the government for what they have done, what they have accomplished in their manifesto. He always have a fault and a suggestion when it comes to your program and any program down here that supports the government. But when he gets on the other program that tear down the government, he join in with the mixing and tearing, and he tear down. Well, he made a comment there about a week and a half ago on a talk show. He said that the Team Unity government ministers, they do not need an increase in salary because they are already, they are double dipping the treasury. So they don't need none. And I said, when he said that, I wonder if you know what the Bible says in Matthew chapter 7 and verse 5. Thou hypocrite, first take the beam out of your eye, then you will see clearly to take the little mote out of your brother's eye. Because he has been working for government and a private firm some years ago. And he admit that he was working for two companies simultaneously. Now, how physically can a person work on two jobs a mile apart from each other at the same time, same date, same week, same month? Well, he admitted, but he refused to show up to work on the government job, but he was collecting the pay for that. So when he accusing people, and when he used to accuse you and Mr. Amory that you are getting two pay, I wonder if he forget he was getting two pay when he only did one work. Anyway, time short. I'll catch you next week. Well, have a good night.
Okay, have a good night as well, and thank you for your contribution. And I'm happy you got the radio, and you can tune in now. Ladies and gentlemen, you listen to On the Mark. I'm your host, Mark Brantley. And I just again to wish all who are listening a good evening. I am terribly sorry that I somehow missed my manners. It is because I'm a little tired. I have had a long week already with Diplomatic Week. It has, however, been going remarkably well. We started on Sunday with a church service at the Zion Moravian Church in St. Kitts, and we have continued apace. Monday I had numerous bilaterals. Bilateral simply means that these are one-on-one discussions with the ambassadors of various countries. Tuesday, we had the opening ceremony at the Marriott, and certainly today we had an all-day event here on the island of Nevis. And I believe that the diplomats have been doing a great job. I know they came to Nevis. Many of them, they interacted with the sixth formers here in Nevis. They went and found out in St. Kitts at the various schools. And the idea really is to demystify diplomacy and to let people know really what we do. A lot of people seem to see it as, you know, just people travel up and down and don't do very much. The truth is, it is incredibly hard work, sometimes incredibly difficult issues, trying to find solutions, trying to find common ground where parties sometimes differ, and they differ considerably. And of course, for us as a small developing country, it is to find partners that can assist us in our developmental thrust, and to find partners who are like-minded, or sometimes because they want something, to seek to leverage that into them being a voice for us in forums where they have a voice and we don't. You take, for example, the EU. The EU, we have engaged quite actively with Romania. People may ask, well, how come Romania? How you know about Romania? Well, Romania is chairing the EU and will be chair for 6 months. And so whilst Romania is chair, we have tried to reach common ground with Romania on a number of issues, that Romania can be a voice for us in a significant hemispheric body like the EU, which allows us to have that voice when we ourselves are not members. When you look at larger countries, United Kingdom, the United States, etc., they're members of, say, is it G7 or G8, whatever it's called, G20 as the case may be. Again, we are small countries, we are not part of those clubs. But those clubs make rules that end up becoming international rules, binding on all of us. And so again, it is useful to develop relationships where people understand. And there are areas, I think, where the Caribbean has done very well in bringing awareness to the world on the issue of climate change and the impact, in bringing now the question of vulnerability as a part and parcel of the discussion about development. I think all of those are critical areas in which the Caribbean has done well. And so we continue to engage with partners. And so when people ask me, what is it about diplomacy? What do you get out of it? We get out of it relationships which ultimately we can leverage. I am a great believer in education. So I go, and my foreign service officers who sit in meetings with me will always say that the first thing on my agenda is scholarships and training. And I believe out of this diplomatic week, you will shortly hear about new countries offering scholarships and training to our people. And I certainly look forward to that, and continue to encourage our people that when these opportunities arise, to grab them. And don't bother with the naysayers who continue to tell you, don't do this and don't do that. As I like to say, don't let anybody take you out of bread and can't afford to give you biscuit. Old people say so, and old people have a lot of sense. And so I urge you not to allow people to take you out of bread and cannot give you biscuit. The numbers to call, we have about 25 minutes left if you want to be a part of the show, are 869-469-1616 or 869-469-1700. If you've just tuned in, you're listening to On the Mark. I'm your host, Mark Brantley, and this is Straight Talk Across the Narrows. We are on radio every Wednesday from 8 to 10. We try to be here every Wednesday, rain or shine. Can't say snow because we don't get that in Nevis. But rain or shine, we try to be here, and we try to bring topics and expose people as we did tonight in terms of young businessmen who have this carry pay, in terms of our health insurance. We bring things that we think are topical and of interest to you. And sometimes, of course, no matter how hard we try, you call in and you put your own topics on the table. And that, of course, you are eminently and equally entitled to do as well. Things in the country, I think, are going fairly well. There's always room for improvement. Here in Nevis, of course, we are seeking to manage a very tight fiscal situation. We recognize, again, that the Four Seasons Resort will close, one of our major employers, on the 1st of June, they've indicated, and they'll be closed for the months of June, July, August, and September. 4 months. And we've asked and advised people since December of last year that this was coming, and asked people to ready themselves, those who will be impacted. Of course, our concerns will be with the workers who are negatively impacted. We're told just over 400 workers will have that 4-month layoff, if you will, be before the hotel reopens. The Four Seasons has agreed to pay workers 25% of their salaries during that period that they're not working. They've agreed that they will pay them that 25% even if they were able to find additional work in that 4 months. They've agreed that the construction company DCK will seek to employ as many of those 400 people as possible who can offer their labor and bring something to the table insofar as construction is concerned. We have indications that some additional funding will be made available. I will say something on that publicly as I have the information, hard information in hand. At this point, we've only had an indication that that will be the case. But the Four Seasons, and I think, some workers have expressed concerns, and I want to make it clear that there's no legal requirement for the Four Seasons to pay anybody anything. Four Seasons could have simply shut their doors and reopen in October. The Four Seasons, however, has indicated that they would like as much as possible to hold on to their staff, and that is why they want to put this mechanism in place, as well as, of course, bring some relief to the staff who will be negatively impacted by this closure. And they have accordingly come up with this figure of 25%. This was not a matter for the government. I want to make that clear, in the sense that the government really could not compel Four Seasons to do anything in this regard, because Four Seasons only had to do what the law required it to do. And so this 25% is from them gratuitous in nature because they didn't have to pay. Some have argued and said, well, why can't I get my severance pay? And the short answer is, if you qualify for severance, you can opt to sever your employment with the Four Seasons during its closure and take your severance pay. But if you do that, then when the hotel reopens in October, you'll have to reapply, with no guarantee, of course, that you will be rehired. And so that is the risk that you take. And people are entitled to evaluate that risk and determine whether they take it. And if in October you are rehired, then the clock starts again. So if you had 10 or 15 years, that starts over because you had severed your employment on the closure, and then you now seek to be rehired in October. So each household will have to make decisions for itself. But during this season, this is a slow season. And the June, July, August period, September period tends to be a slow time. And basically during that time, because I have had workers complain to me and say they're only getting 2 days per week. So the truth is that when you look at what workers would get in terms of work, if the hotel were open during the slowest period of the year, and you compare it 2 days a week to 25% that they get now for not working at all and being free to find work elsewhere during that same period, I think some workers are at least as well off, and in some cases not worse off than they would have been had the hotel stayed open and they only had the 2 days per week. And I think people need to think about it, look at the numbers. There's a lot of propaganda out there. There's a lot of chatter. And I think that people should really evaluate very carefully. The hotel has been closed in the past. Many who are there now remember. Many who are no longer there also remember. And during those times, the hotel didn't have to pay anything, and people simply collected their severance pay. In this case, we have a finite period, God willing, and barring any unforeseen circumstances. We know the hotel will reopen in October. It will reopen as a practically brand new hotel, having gone through a very significant tens of millions of US dollars upgrades. And so when that happens, people go back to a brand new establishment and start anew in October. And that, I think, will be very exciting for the entire island, a very significant investment in the Grand Dam of Caribbean hotels. It is their desire, they say, to take it back to the #1 resort in the world that it used to be. And so I think we have something to look forward to. But of course, there will be a period of pain, a period of discomfort as the hotel closes in June. So I am always willing to listen and to answer questions. We will continue. In addition, the government has agreed that there will be no deductions from the 25%. So whatever the 25% works out to, you will take that home in your pocket. There will be no deductions, and the government will forego any tax or any revenue of that nature that it would otherwise gather. We have also already started the conversation with the banks to ask them that during that period they work out some form of package to ensure that people are not unduly burdened. And we will have a conversation with the private sector to determine if the private sector can absorb some people on a temporary basis, so that all of us equally seek to bear and share the burden and to help each other. The phones are ringing. Let me go back. It is 20 minutes to the hour of 10 o'clock. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Good evening to you.
So how are you doing? I thought you would have been down here celebrating, Diplomatic Week?
Well, I have been celebrating Diplomatic Week all week, Saturday and Sunday. I was with them in Nevis all day today, and I believe that tonight they have an off night, if memory serves.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. I just wanted to clear the air about what that caller said. You know how I feel about the 2 salaries from the treasuries of the country. I mean, I've made that clear. We've discussed that. That's no secret. I've also said that before we give you all a raise of pay, we should know the actual amounts taken from the treasury. For yes, the estimates give an idea of the salaries, but not the perks and allowances. I mean, each time you travel, for instance, there's a per diem. There are duty-free concessions that can add up to thousands of dollars, right? So we don't know the actual amount that, on a, let's say, an annual basis, that you're actually taking. And to say that, as some have been saying down here, that you all should get a raise commensurate with the private sector is unreasonable. I mean, if you want to make millions, stay in the private sector, right? This is about public service, right? And somehow it seems kind of unfair, too, that the top tier of the public service should be getting a pay raise. I mean, what about to me, any raise should be comprehensive. You know, you should look at the differences between the scales because there are wide disparities. You know, and a 10% raise on your pay, for instance, and a 10% raise on somebody who, I was flabbergasted the other day to hear people still making just $2,500 in government service. But somebody who gets a raise of 10% there, compared to a raise on, let's say, a salary like yours, I mean, that's a huge difference. So, you know, all I was saying is that it should be comprehensive, and it should, before we give you all a raise, we should have, we should know the actual amounts that are taken in, okay? Not just look at the salaries, because we know that it's not just salaries alone. I mean,
caller, I see you, despite the criticism that you get, and I don't know if you deserve them, but I mean, it is the nature of democracy. It's a cut and thrust of debate. I still see you as somebody that I reason with from time to time. Mm-hmm. So you should know that the budgetary documents each year set out what you hope to spend.
Right.
But the documents during each budget also set out, particularly through your audit report, etc., whether you were within or without those figures.
Yeah.
So I don't know why people think that government spending is some kind of secret. It is true that in December, say when the budget for 2019 is read, it is true if you say, well, boy, the only thing I know is that the Prime Minister going to make 10,000 a month, using a round figure,
right,
plus 2,000 constituency allowance, plus whatever. So the total package for the Prime Minister is $15,000 a month. And then...
in salary and allowance.
Yes, I'm just saying. And I'm just using figures randomly. I don't want anybody to go and quote me and say he gets 15,000. Okay? So
it might be twice that, but
or half that. I don't know. So the possibility is that let's use the figure of 15,000. Now that is all his allowances. You're absolutely correct. That if he travels, he gets a per diem, and that clearly adds to the amount of money that he would collect from the Treasury. But those amounts are all then at the end of the year would be revealed in the documentation normally, because the auditor, the director of audit, would look at the numbers and determine whether or not they were within.
Hold on though, is that a fact? Because
no, what I'm saying is
the per diem, those kinds of things, and in a head, an overall head.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But that's the point I'm trying to make. Okay, you won't say that the Prime Minister collected $10,000 in per diem.
Right.
But the Director of Audits, which is an independent office, is charged with looking at those matters. And so the Director of Audit ordinarily would tell you in the Director of Audit's report whether or not salaries, wages, whatever, the expenditure that was budgeted is within the framework of the budget.
Yes, over or out. But it would not suggest that there was overspending by the Prime Minister on his trip.
Well, no, it could suggest that if the Prime Minister on his trips is outside the budgeted amounts.
What was budgeted.
Yes, it would identify why.
It was not a budget for the Prime Minister's trip. It as far as I
and that whilst that is true, I'm saying the Director of Audit would have the ability to identify if that was a problem. What I'm trying to say is, if the Prime Minister decides, listen, I'm going to travel every day for the year, and so collects per diem or whatever he collects for his travel, right? And therefore puts it outside the framework of the budget, in terms of, let's say the budget put $1 million.
Yeah.
And he ended up spending, the government ended up spending $1.5 million.
Right.
Then the Director of Audit
raise a flag.
Would raise a flag and say that this extra $500,000 was spent, and this is the circumstance in which it was spent.
Right.
So,
and in that case, too, all you all have to do is give an account for it. But
that is what happens.
It has already been spent.
Yes.
And it could also mean that you, Mr. Brantley, might have gotten an extra 100,000, whereas the Honorable Patches Liebert might have traveled less and that kind of thing, and just gotten 20,000.
Yeah, but you
right?
say, wait, just before you think, because I think it's also important to understand that your per diem is designed to, is that people see it as if it's just pure income. That's not the case. That's not the case. Your per diem, I think, is designed to cover certain charges that you would incur if you're overseas.
Well, unless things change radically, if I recall from my years of service there, and having been on numerous trips, in the first place, a lot of times those expenses are met by whatever agency you're traveling with. I mean, it might be different from ministers, but whatever agencies you're traveling with. And
it depends on the trip, caller.
Yeah.
Because, for example, I in order to save the Treasury money, when I travel, I would say 80% of my travels are what we call funded travel. So that means if I'm invited, say the other day I went to Romania, and from Romania I went to Morocco. The Romanian government funded my trip to Romania, as it did for the rest of CARICOM.
Right.
And then when I went to Morocco, the Moroccan government funded my trip there, meaning that they paid for your airfare and your hotel. Right? But ordinarily, if you things like meals, transportation on the ground sometimes, or alternatively, when we go to trips that are not funded, and the United Nations General Assembly is one that sticks out, because each year we go to New York for that, and that is funded by us, the taxpayers. Right? You get a per diem which covers things like your transportation, your meals, and things of that nature. So all I'm saying is I don't want people to go with the impression that your per diem just go in your pocket, and there is no corresponding obligation, because that is not accurate.
It would be nice, though, if the public knew, and that's what I was saying, the public knew, well, exactly how much they add up to.
Yeah, and
then the duty-free concession.
And the duty-free concession, I think the policy is well known. As I understand the policy, you get access to a duty-free concession, I think, is once every few years. I think it might even be one every 5 years. It's very similar to what permanent secretaries get, and other designated heads of certain departments. That isn't difficult, but I agree with you. I think more information is better than less.
And
I would have no problem.
All of us want our public officials to be properly paid. Some people say to avoid corruption, but I don't think that's a good reason to go into public service. If you're going to pay them exorbitant amounts to prevent them from taking stuff on the table and that kind of thing. That would be a really terrible.
Well, Paula, that has been said. I really don't know, because I think people are motivated by whatever they're motivated by. And in Singapore, for example, they're some of the highest paid public servants in the world, ministers in the world, because they say that they pay them so much money that they don't have to engage in any kind of untoward activity to earn money. They also, of course, will have very stringent laws that deal with any politician or anybody who's a minister who does anything untoward. So you have to have both. I think Singapore has a carrot in the sense of very large salaries, and they have a stick, because if you were to breach their rules, ethics and otherwise, then there are very serious implications for that. So you need to have a combination of both. But I will agree with you on this, that those who come to public service and those who ask to be in this peculiar position, because it's a position where much is given and much is demanded, that person should be willing to have their public life scrutinized. And part of their public life is certainly the amount of money that they collect from the coffers of the public. So I don't have a quarrel with that. If a man gets a per diem, if a man gets a per diem of $100 a day, and he spent 80, so he had 20 left, or conversely, which can happen, he gets a per diem of $100 a day and he had to spend 150 because he had additional costs, then I think that those are matters which no reasonable leader or no reasonable public servant should have a difficulty, because it's coming out of the taxpayers' money. So I don't have a problem with that. I won't argue with you on that.
Disparities.
I'm sorry?
Between the disparities between the ministers and the Prime Minister and ministers and the rest of the public service, because I mean, y'all can't really function without them.
Well, yes, but that's apples and oranges.
Is it?
It is apples and oranges. It is because really? Of course it is. A public servant doesn't have my responsibility, caller. Yes,
but your responsibilities can be carried out without the public servant.
Well, whilst that may be true, they do not have my responsibility, nor they have my risk and my burden. If tomorrow something in Nevis breaks down, the public service continues and the public servant continues to have his or her job. Mark Brantley is whose head they're going to call for, because they're going to say Mark Brantley is the Premier Nevis. I am the Premier Nevis. I'm home in my bed sleeping. And a man goes to somebody's home and shoots them. I'm the first person is called. He's not doing enough on crime. So let us be real. When we talk about responsibility, you cannot compare the two. Right? And you cannot say if you're...
I'm not sure saying it should be equal. You know.
If you're going to compare... No, caller. Let's not mix apples and oranges. If you're going to compare permanent secretary in St. Kitts and Nevis compare them with permanent secretaries around the region. If you're going to compare a politician, then compare them with politicians around the region. Nowhere in the world are you going to compare the prime minister to a PS or a head of a department. That really doesn't make any sense. So if you want to determine whether or not you're on par, you're less than, more than, then do that comparison. So tell me how much government officials in Anguilla, Dominica, Jamaica making, and you compare that. You compare apples and apples.
The only thing about that is that the officials at that level basically decide their own pay, which I mean, which in the final analysis, they can just get up and decide, I'm going to give myself a 50% increase, right? Whereas that is not so low down, right? But okay, but I agree that it is more responsibility. I noticed the caller got on my case because of
I didn't know you were the man talking about.
But I guess the two, I would like to know, to ask him, how does one go through several promotions, many promotions, travel often, you know, went through so many ministers and permanent secretaries and heads and principals without there not being repercussions for something like that, egregious as that, right? I mean, he should think, right?
No, maybe because you were Labour.
Oh, but it was during both administrations.
So Pam was asleep when you were Labour and they let you get away with it?
Pam was asleep.
All right, my brother. The phone is ringing. You have to leave it there because we don't have a lot of time today. But thanks for your contribution. All right, let's go back to the phones. We only have about 6 minutes. Good evening. You're on the mark. Hello?
Hello, Mark.
Yes, you're on the mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. We don't have time, so go ahead.
Yes, I would just say that one of your perhaps name must be Job, because you really have a lot of patience. But I will get into that another time. I just want to ask you if just recently St. Kitts was got this very outstanding recognition as the best sustainable destination in the world.
Yes.
Well, I am extremely proud, which I must commend the Minister of Tourism and also his ministry for the outstanding work that he has done, and by extension, the people who are directly and indirectly involved in tourism. We have reasons to be proud, and I am telling you, this is one of the reasons why I called this evening, because I am very, very proud for this outstanding recognition that our country has just received. I will just say quickly that we will never get rid of the only triple government in the Caribbean. Let me repeat. We will never get rid of the only triple government in the Caribbean. And I also want to say to you, Mark, that Denzil Douglas, I understand, say he has a dream team. And this is one of the time when he is so correct. Because even after the next election, his team will be still dreaming. So that is very, very important. But let me say, for the last, that team unity at its worst is still better than Denzil Douglas and Labour at its very best. There's so much that we will have to say when it comes to the next election.
When is the election going to be?
Well, the next election, when we have that sometime next year, it's going to be, right now, the only one seat that the Labour Party has a chance to win. That is still going down. The only seat, I am telling you, putting it to you, to the country, to the world, and I will bet even a small bet of 10,000 on that. The only one seat that the present opposition party has a chance to win, because the rest gone, right? That is going down. So they can still continue to fight, because I know, yes, that they will not be happy to get 11-0. But a good opportunity and will get another opportunity. I am not worried. The bottom line is that we got over 11,000 votes in the last election. We will get more votes than that. And the voters list will be far less than what we have on the list today. So how these people are going to get into government? And if anybody really, to be honest, is serious about governance, not saying that the present government is perfect, because there is no government that is perfect. There is no government that will do everything, please everybody all the time. But the bottom line and the reality is that the St. Nevis government, and record, look at the performance. I mean, I'm going to come back another time. We will be able to go through when in terms of tourism, infrastructure, the economy. There's so much. And based on the performance of the last government, all of them have disqualified themselves for holding public office. Okay, Mark, you take care.
Okay, my brother. Well, you have taken us to the end of the show, and the band has struck up. It is 2 minutes or thereabouts based on this clock, but you know what they say, when the band strikes up, we have to go. We thank the good people from Carrie Pay who were here, Mr. Anthony Gager, and of course, Mr. Dion Herbert joined us via telephone. We thank the people from the Health Promotion Unit and Mr. Zilla Clark in St. Kitts who called in to assist Dr. Barry Rollins, who was here with us in the studio on the whole issue of national health insurance and to give us an update. And we ask one and all to go out and support on Monday the 15th of April from 1 to 4 p.m. at NEPAC, the Junior Chef Competition, where all 9 primary schools are going to compete to see who is Junior Chef of the Year. That's our show. It was a short show in terms of the political discussions that we would normally have. We ask your forgiveness for that, but we think it was a show that brought valuable information to the public nevertheless, and that is what we're here to do. The band has struck up. It means it's time to go. You have been listening to Mark Brantley and On the Mark for today's edition, and this show will be rebroadcast tomorrow at 1 p.m.